Well, welcome back, guys, to the fourth edition of Rhythm and News.
Yeah.
Fun stuff, man.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, we've stuck with it for 4 months.
Yeah, and man, we've stayed busy. Good Lord, man, it's been
since everything. Well, not everything, but since venues have pretty well opened back up for us to play.
yeah.
It's been a tight ship.
Yes. Yeah, it's been good. Conveniently, it's been very good for us.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun, or at least I have anyway. The last few shows we've had. Got kind of a new setup for our live shows, which I think has benefited us a lot.
Yeah, like we talked about in the last episode, we're doing a kind of a series on tone specifically. And in the last episode, we talked about body styles, like whether they're solid body, hollow body, and semi-hollow. We talked briefly about pickups, and we talked about tone and volume knobs. Was there anything else we talked about?
I think that's what we covered.
Okay, I actually remembered it all.
Boom!
Nice. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, today what we wanted to try to do is kind of finish up what you can do on your instrument itself. So we're going to try to finish that up. Now, there are some more things that kind of go into that, but we're going to mainly talk about the stuff that most people are going to be able to tell the difference in tone based on these things. But we just want to touch on the last, what we feel are the last four things that make it noticeable that you can change without really putting any money into your instrument. The first thing we'll talk about is your string sizes, and then we're going to go into the size of your pick or your plectrum. Go back to the high school days.
Oh, wow.
It's been a while for that one, ain't it?
Yeah, we should briefly tell them about that.
We'll do it when we get to that section.
Yeah.
What's the last two things on there, Luke?
Picking dynamics, that is, believe it or not, a big thing about tone. And also your playing style, like how do you play the guitar?
Right. And that's with your strumming hand and your fretting hand. Together, both.
Yeah. Well, I guess let's dive down into string sizes. And just briefly, a overarching statement about string sizes that I'm sure you've heard: the bigger the string you use, the more tone you get.
Yeah, and the more difficult it is to play.
That's also the other caveat with bigger string sizes. Like there's the myth that Stevie Ray Vaughan used 13s for his Stratocasters. Also, he's tuned a half step down, but man's playing like naval tow rope for strings.
Yeah.
Which that is true. It do that.
His bottom string was a 13.
Yeah. The bigger the string, the bigger the tone. But also, on the other hand, you look at Billy Gibbons, who is the guitar player for ZZ Top. The man has tone for days. He plays eights, or .008.
Right.
So, and that's to give
Which
you
would be like ultralights.
Ultralights. These on this guitar are 10s, and that's what I like with this guitar.
Right. So if you go to a music store, or if you're kind of new to guitar and you're looking at changing strings on your guitar for the first time or something, when you go, basically what you're going to see is you're going to see lights, mediums, and heavies, right? And that's really, when you see that, you're looking at lights being 10s, what we call 10s, medium being 11s, and heavy being 12s, and the number refers to the size of the bottom string.
Yes.
So your high E string, right? So this high E is what that number refers to, and then the strings go up in size from there. So a 9 would be what they consider a super light, and an 8 would be like an ultra light.
Yeah. So I guess the takeaway really is you don't necessarily have to have a stupidly large size string to get big tone. You don't need that, but it can help. But just like you said, if you're going to play a big string, it is going to be extremely hard to play.
Right. And if you're really interested in this, Rhett Scholl and Rick Beato on YouTube have done a really in-depth experiment with this, where they took the same guitar and the same amp, and the same recording mics. Everything was identical. The only thing they done is they changed the strings, and they played the same songs, and it was 3 different people.
You told me about
Yep,
the video.
3
and I
different
watched
people.
It.
They each played one thing, and then they changed strings. They each played the same thing, and they put them back to back to back to back. And you can hear a difference. Now, if you do go watch that, watch it with headphones. You'll notice a difference if you really pay attention. And actually, Rhett Scholl says in there too that he realized in it that he was not playing the size strings that he needed to be playing to get the sound that he wanted.
That's right.
So it actually changed his mind on what he thought for years. So if you want more on that, you can watch those because they've already done the real in-depth with that. But we just basically wanted to let you know that if you can't quite get the tone you're looking for, try a different size string.
It can be that simple. Seriously.
Right. That semi-hollow that I've showcased the last couple of times, that IYV tele style that I've got, when I got it had 9s on it. When it comes shipped to me, it had 9 D'Addarios on it, is what it was. And I couldn't stand it. Like when I took it out of the box and tuned it, it was so pingy I couldn't handle it. But we put 11s on it, and I've loved that thing since
Night
then.
and day difference.
It's a total difference just by changing. And I didn't change nothing else. All I did was change the strings on it. If you're looking for something just a little bit different, if you just can't, just something's a little bit off, try a different size string. Go up a size and try it out. If you don't like it, go down a size.
But keep in mind, if you do go down in size, you might possibly have to change your nuts.
Right, depending on how it's cut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's
And
just...
same with going up, because if you go up in strings, the nut might not be cut for that, and it'll
Exactly.
catch. You won't be able to, you'll tune, and then you'll play, and all of a sudden it won't be in tune anymore.
Yes.
And that's where it's catching in the nut, because you've went up a size string, and it's not.
So keep that in mind
Yeah.
as well. I just thought of that.
Right, yeah. So, but anyway, look at string size. If you don't like, if there's something, like I said, if there's something a little off, look at your string size. Maybe experiment a little bit. And of course, the different brands of strings are probably going to have a little bit of tonality difference in them. But that's probably going to be something that you're probably not going to notice unless you put them back to back in a recording, and listen to them like an A/B situation. Personally, I like elixirs myself.
Yeah.
And that's just to say it so that if you are new and you're looking at, what brand do I go with? I personally like elixirs. Now, you're going to pay for them comparatively to the other ones, but
They're worth it.
I don't have to change them near as often, and they stay smooth.
Yeah, that's actually what I'm using on these, and I think I've used this same set of strings for about 5 or 6 shows.
Right. So.
And they still feel and sound brand new.
Right. So, that's kind of the nitty-gritty of the different string sizes. Now, we would tell you that if you go down in size, this is what happens to your tone. If you go up in size, this is what happens. But that's not necessarily true, because that really, again, depends on these other things that we're going to talk about, and it depends on your guitar and your setup, So there's not really a one-size-fits-all that if you go down a string size that, your tone is going to get more clean and less grit. There's not a real set what happens. That really depends on your setup. So you just got to experiment with it. Personally, I like 11s. That's me.
And me, I like 10s.
Right.
That's just your preference is
Yeah.
all it is. Well, let's move on to the next thing that we're going to talk about, and that's pick size. Tell us a little bit about that, man.
So when you go to look at picks,
They look like these little triangles for the most part.
yeah, they got some funny looking ones out there if you want to get into.
Oh,
They've actually got a
yeah.
machine where you can make your own, like and but they do come in different thicknesses. So obviously you can get them in different sizes as far as how big the actual pick itself is. That's not necessarily what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the thickness of that pick itself. So, for instance, the one that I have here is an 88 millimeter, right? And that's measured in millimeters, because is it on there? But when you go
0.88, yeah.
Yeah. So when you go look at picks and start thinking about those things, I don't know what the lowest one they make is, but it's paper thin. Because I've seen one.
I think the lowest I've seen is like a 0.5 or so. It's somewhere around there, and it's I can't do anything with it.
Yeah, there's some of them like you don't even you can barely even hear the string. 'Cause
Yeah.
it just, you know, it's so flimsy. But
I don't like to go below a .73. Personally.
.73 is about, the same. And they make them all the way up to like 1 point whatever.
1.5, I
you know.
think, or maybe bigger than that.
Yeah,
but
and some of those are meant for playing a bass with a pick as well, because thicker gauge strings. That's something as well that you can experiment with if you want to see if it does give you a noticeably different tone, in which it can. You know, you're probably not going to notice a big difference between a .88 and a .73. Again, you would probably have to put them back to back. But you will probably notice a difference in like a 1.06 versus an 88.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
So again, pick size is something to consider when you're looking at tone. But find something that fits in your hand nice, something you can hold on to, and something that just feels right.
Yes. It's got to feel right.
The old plectrum.
Yeah, the old plectrum. Yeah, I guess about that story. Of course, we've mentioned we grew up just about a mile down the road from each other, and we were in a high school band, and we were all, learning our instruments, and found out that this little thing, the technical term for it is called a plectrum, and I came in and told everybody that, and that's kind of just been like a running joke ever since.
Yeah, even though it's really not a joke, it's actually a fact.
No, it is a fact. This is a plectrum, is what it is. And also plectrums can come in, for the most part, he mentioned nylon. I don't know, this is called a Tortex. It kind of feels like a plastic. It's what it feels kind of like to me.
Yeah.
There are some that are actually made out of tortoise shell. Those are really expensive from what I understand. Billy Gibbons even, talking about him again, used a peso. For years, he actually took a peso and like rounded off the edges, and that was his pick. And a totally different, he got a brighter sound.
Right, because he's using metal.
Exactly.
Yep.
So even the material.
I've used pennies before.
Yeah, so think of that. Like, what are your picks made of? I'm sure wood might even sound good if you wanted to whittle.
Well, now that, we got a friend that actually made one out of wood, didn't he?
Yeah. That's why I thought of that.
Yeah, that he was using. So you got different tonalities in what you're just like, what the guitar is made out of. The same thing with your pick. Depending on what it's made out of, gives you different sounds. Same thing with a slide.
Yes.
A glass versus a ceramic versus a brass. They all have. You could get the same size in all three, but they're all three going to have a different tone. After that, we talked about pick dynamics and play style, which they kind of go hand in hand. When you talk about play style, to me, when I think about play style, I'm thinking about my fretting hand. And then when I think about pick dynamics, I'm thinking of my strumming hand. And then you put them both together, I guess they are play style together.
That's actually a really good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Like seriously, that is a really good way to work at it, and especially separating the two hands. Way to.
Picking dynamics does not apply to your fretting hand, whichever one that may be.
And that makes perfect sense to me.
So that's kind of how I have looked at it.
And that's the way we'll look at it here on the show. and that seriously makes perfect sense. Like he was saying, the picking just think of your picking dynamics in your picking hand. I've got my volume all the way up, but I played that whole passage just really softly, as opposed to.
Right.
But the volume on the guitar stayed the same. The only thing that changed was how I used.
How you played it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How my right hand did.
You'll
its job.
hear that commonly referred to digging in.
Yeah, that's what we dig in. Yeah.
But yeah, he's totally right. So if we're talking about tone, we talked about how rolling the volume knob and stuff back can kind of change your tone from being crunchy or dirty to kind of cleaning it up without really having to change anything else. You just kind of roll some volume off. It's the same thing with your picking dynamics. You got really dirty at full volume, but if I soften that touch,
it cleans up naturally.
Right. Now, there's still a little bit dirt in there because I do have a pedal engaged.
Yeah,
But, we love to play blues.
absolutely.
If you've met us, you know that. You know, and I'm kind of new to the whole playing lead part of it. And you can probably shine some light on this more than I can. What I've come to notice, if I'm playing a lead and I really want that, right, but I could do that same lick, depending on where I'm at in the song, right? So you got one that's more like a build-up, like in your face, and then you've got another one, and the only thing I've done different is just changed how I attack those notes, right? So picking dynamics. And you can shed some more light on that than I can, but...
To me, first thing I thought of right there was call and response. And that's kind of a different thing, but in a way it's not. Like the call is one musical idea, and the response is just a response to the first idea. But the way you are doing that with dynamics is an example of that.
Right. And that goes for rhythm or lead or any of it. I mean, depending on how you pick those notes, whether it's arpeggio or whether it's all together, you know, it depends on what that's going to sound like. And you need to consider those things when you're in, you know, if you're playing with somebody, if you're playing solo, you need to consider those things because that's going to give your song dynamics. It's going to give it feeling, right? So you don't want to be in a real soft, tender part of a song and just, you want to, you want to make that a real tender part of the song.
Exactly. That's a really good example.
But whether you're playing acoustically or with electrics, you can do that same thing.
Exactly.
So, you know, your acoustic shows, you solo players or duo players out there that are doing acoustic, you know, playing an acoustic electric or however you do that, it's the same thing. The same thing applies.
Now, seriously, experiment with your picking dynamics because you would be surprised at some of the results you can get.
Yeah, it can totally change the way your song feels to your audience just by not just doing a straight strum pattern through the whole song, you know, change it up, you know, on the softer parts, play softer, and, you know, vice versa, build it up.
One thing that, I've been using a lot of is using my left hand to obviously fret certain notes, but also at the same time to mute certain notes.
Right.
I'm only hitting those three bottom strings, even though I've got that whole A position fretted.
Right, and if you're new to guitar and you're playing with somebody that does this, it's going to frustrate you because you're trying to figure out what chord they're playing and you can't figure it out because they got more fingers up there than they need. But it is really useful, especially if you are playing solo. It's really useful because you can kind of get some of those different voicings without clouding it up or muddying it up with those extra notes that you really don't need.
Exactly.
Yeah. Another thing with your play style, and we're referencing the fretting hand for this, is vibrato.
Oh, that's actually something I've not heard enough people talk about right there.
I mean...
And what we're talking about is it's not so much with when you're playing chords, but when you're playing single note and lead passages that. Well, that right there is what we're talking about, where you're literally just bending the note repeatedly.
Right. Just a little bit, just enough.
Yeah, we're not going...
Which, I mean, you could, depending on what you wanted in your song, but...
I mean, it's depending on what you wanted.
Yeah.
Exactly. But for the most part, people are subtle with it.
You know, like if you was ending a song, right? So the So there's an example you could do it with a chord, right? So vibrato is one thing really, honestly, when I watch or when I play, that kind of tells me how long that person's been playing. And I know I haven't been in the guitar game that long, but just seeing somebody that ends a phrase with a lets me know that they know a little bit about what they're doing, just a little bit.
Yes.
You know, to me anyway. Now, I mean, that's not to rag on you if you don't. You know, if you've been playing league for 15 years and that's something you haven't done, that's not saying you don't. It's just, I don't know. It's just a thing that I look for.
It's something that's, I guess it just appeals to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Of course, you know, with this guitar, I've got the
That's another thing too, man. A vibrato arm.
right. Well, tremolo, but I guess whatever you want to. It's either one. It could be both.
See, to me, that's not tremolo. Like
Well, yeah, you're right. Because tremolo would be.
tremolo to me is more like it's panning. Like
Yeah.
like if you've got like a stereo pan.
Yeah.
To me, that's more like vibrato.
So you can do it also if you have. Well, we'll just call it a whammy bar.
Because that's what it is. Well, you're vibrato in the opposite direction.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I don't have a floating bridge on this, and that's a whole another thing.
Yeah.
But I don't have a floating bridge, so I can only bend down. I can't bend it up. But same with that. That kind of it detunes it a little bit, but I can get kind of the same effect. That way.
Yeah, it's
And I'm not doing much, just enough to kind of shake it a little bit. You know, a whole lot of shaking going on. Oh, I'm glad you liked that joke, Luke. So
Yeah, that was good.
anyway, so there's 4 other things to add with the 4 things that we've already covered. So there's 8 just dealing with your instrument that can affect your tone. You know, so those are some things to consider if you're looking for something a little bit different. The next time we meet, and I know we're a little bit late on getting this one, but like he said, we've been slammed with stuff to do.
So busy.
But I guess from there we'll transition into our pedals.
Yeah, we can talk about pedals. I mean, and it really, that can be an episode in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of pedals, and we can't show
Yeah.
you all of them because we can't afford all of them.
Yeah, that's no, but we do between the two of us. We've got a good example from like each
Right.
category. So we'll put our collective our toys
Yeah,
together.
with our forces combined.
We will get you an episode just on pedals. Yeah.
So the next episode, I guess we'll move into pedals, and we'll probably leave that one just at pedals because it'll take us a little while to get through those.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I mean, we're getting close.
Yeah, man. We still can talk about amps at some point.
Yeah, we got to move into the amps after that, and then I guess really the difference would be between a tube and a solid state
Yeah.
as far as tone goes.
Yeah.
And then of course I've got my Black Star now that you can jump the 2 channels on, which is something.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool.
So that being said, Luke, I think that's going to do it for this episode, and hopefully there's something in here that you can use.
Tell us in the comments what you liked, what you learned. What would you like us to talk about, or what would you like us to kind of experiment with? Tell us in the comments. Hit that subscribe button. We appreciate it. It lets you know when we put out some new material. Follow us on Facebook. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And just keep on playing. Oh, he dropped his plectrum.
I got another one over here.
Well, I was about to say if I dropped mine,
Jumped out and bit me.
I'd have to get into my Altoids can, but I got a problem.
Yeah, that's the most important pedal we got to
That's
talk
the
about.
most important pedal is the Altoids can. Why don't you come up with something for us? I did the last one.
All right, let's see.
So thanks for watching, guys, and thanks for listening. And catch us at one of our shows coming up in the month of September or October, and we'll get together here in a couple weeks and we'll start filming for the next one of these.
Yeah, but don't wake me up till September ends.
But
Hey, I'm Kenneth Cope.
and I'm Lucas McCoy, and thanks for watching Rhythm and News.